Will he win? We're going to take on all three with one of the best legal minds in the business. He doesn't like me saying that. That's too bad. Former Whitewater Independent Counsel Robert Ray. Also tonight, Biden, in or out, and what happens if he runs? What do you say? Let's get after it. 47 months is a long time. Now, people are going to tell you about set-offs and programs that may even reduce that further, but it's hard time in prison. However, Mueller wanted Manafort to get 24 years. But, again, the judge today said 47 months in Virginia, and he's going to get credit for time served. So that means 9 months get chopped off, and then there could be something else. Still, he's getting prison time. I'm just saying it's nothing like what was anticipated by the special counsel. And look, it's a surprise. The almost 70-year-old faced the prospect of spending the rest of his life there if Mueller got what he wanted. It's not over. Again, there'll be a separate sentence next week in Washington, but it was an eye-popper. All right, so let's start with this and bring in Whitewater Independent Counsel Robert Ray. Good here. Good to see you. So we have spoken before, and you said, I got to tell you, not only did they investigate these matters years ago and come up empty, but I don't know that this is going to stick. It's stuck.
Right.
What does this sentence mean to you?
Well, a little context is necessary. I don't want to complicate things too much, but remember, it wasn't that long ago, which is to say within a generation, that a 4-year sentence in connection with a bank fraud case was thought to be pretty harsh and significant. Yeah. What federal judges have questioned in the wake of Enron, WorldCom, the financial crisis, is the big run-up in the sentencing guidelines with regard to the loss calculation, meaning how much money was involved. And the numbers get to be astronomical in a real hurry, which is what happened here. And that's why, principally, he was facing a 19.5 to 24-year sentence.
Also because Mueller was pissed off that he broke his deal and lied to them.
Well, I think that's right. But, I mean, there's another component to it, and I think that's the part that remains in the district court in the District of Columbia. So I think you can expect, and I think you've already teased this appropriately, that there will be incremental punishment that will be added on top of this sentence in all likelihood by the district judge in D.C.
You think it'll be concurrent, or you think it'll be additional?
No, there'll be a portion of it which the judge will have to speak to as to which portion will run concurrent and which portion consecutive.
Concurrent means that that time counts while you're serving. The other time it's not additional.
But because there are other charges, I think it's a fair assumption, Chris. I would expect, even given what otherwise here, what I think some people have characterized as a lenient sentence. And by the way, look, my view of these things is don't criticize the judge for this. This is what the special counsel asked for under the sentencing guidelines. They have the right to take that position. But at the end of the day, the government prevails when justice is served. And this judge has a lot of experience. He made a determination. He understands there's another case out there. I would expect incremental punishment to be added over and on top of this sentence when he's sentenced next week in the other case.
So the political spin is, from the right at least, see, we told you this wasn't that big a deal. We told you that Mueller was overreaching. Do you think that's
that conclusion? I can tell you that when I was independent counsel, there were judges, particularly in the local, jurisdictions, meaning in the District of Columbia and in this case in the Eastern District of Virginia, who were sensitive to the fact that independent counsels have a fair amount of power and can press very hard, in the spotlight, because of public sentiment, shines, very harshly. As I've said on many occasions, and you've heard me say this, I would not wish a special counsel or independent counsel investigation on my worst enemy. It is a terrible place to be. And one of the things that the judges struggle with, I think, appropriately so, is, how would I treat this case if it were just without that public spotlight shining? And would I give the same sentence in that sort of situation that I'm being asked to do so here? Now, I think Judge Ellis had some real problems, and it was signaled early on in the investigation about, wait a minute, are we talking about a prosecution here that is being used as a means toward an end?
Oh, the judge said it so in not so many words today, without saying specifically that, hey, this isn't that bad a guy.
But I would say also, which is why I think Republicans have to be careful about going too far with that. Those charges, bank fraud, and the failure to register as a foreign, agent and tax charges, they independently would have merit.
Yes.
And, I think they were worthy of prosecution on their own, separate and apart from the political context.
I actually think
that
the
we find
political
ourselves.
context has obviously nothing to do with any of that, other than maybe a general description of character.
Right.
His real problem, he was never charged with.
Right.
You understand this very well, but collusion is a behavior, not a crime, unless we're talking about securities law.
Correct.
You'd have to find an act in furtherance of it, actual coordination that equates to a conspiracy.
And I think the judge was trying to signal that early on, apparently in the proceedings,
Right.
when he said, look, I think more for public consumption
That's
than
right.
anything else, to say, hey, everybody kind of put the brakes on things and don't, try to read anything into this with regard to collusion.
Right.
This prosecution I am going to evaluate independently on whether it has merit and what I think is a fair and appropriate sentence.
And that's obviously
and that's what a judge is supposed to do.
I have no
Right?
problem with that.
Right?
But I'm saying I think Manafort, as an example, speaks to the need for oversight. What I'm hearing from the right is,
Yes.
when Mueller's done, no more. Whatever he does, he does. What he doesn't do, he doesn't do. Stop with this oversight. It's harassment. I say no, because Manafort is an example of what you need. He met with Kalimnik. He gave him polling data from that campaign. I would argue that behavior is collusion. I'm not saying it's a crime. I don't think it is. But if you're looking for members of the campaign that reached out to the wrong people and did things that Robert Ray would have never done,
Sure.
there you go.
But that's troublesome. It warrants legitimate congressional investigation and oversight. But I think getting too far carried away with, wait a second, what we're really talking about here is impeachment, or alternatively, to think that once the Mueller investigation ends, you're just going to go off endlessly with investigations,
Just talking about that one thing.
including in the Southern District of New York and elsewhere, to think that that's going to be a stalking horse for the continuation of the Mueller investigation. Look, at some point, this needs to, in my view, and it may not be shared with your audience, but I'm just saying, in my humble opinion, there needs to come a point where there's closure to this. And if in the main what Mueller ultimately determines is that there's not a provable case with regard to conclusion and that which would have otherwise been within the core of his mandate,
Right.
I think that portion should be brought to an appropriate end. And I don't think what it means is, oh, wait a second, we're going to just have free license to continue on with regard to the Trump administration
but don't you need to
through the
know,
end of his term.
Did the president know what was going on with Manafort? What was going on with Stone? What was going on with that meeting with his son and Manafort and his son-in-law? The meetings that Kushner was taking? Where his money is? Does anybody owe him anything? These are issues this president has created. Nobody had to manufacture them.
No,
we
but
need the answers
but
to
we
those,
all
do we not?
we all understand where politics can be played. And I think what I've tried to suggest all along since when I was independent counsel, that if what you're talking about is using prosecution as an alternative tool toward politics.
This is congressional oversight.
Well, that's fine, but I think they need to be more candid about what their intentions are. Oversight is one thing. If really what they're talking about here is they don't want to, the leadership doesn't want to signal what their intentions are, but really what this is about is impeachment.
Robert, you wouldn't
that's
want to
a
look
problem.
at these questions if you changed the R and the D.
No,
if the guy, you knew he was lying to you about things.
Sure.
Why? You don't know. But he lied about when he was negotiating a deal. He lied about what he knew about the meeting with his son and the other people. And you don't know what he knew about Manafort and Stone, except that he says nothing. And now his lawyer comes forward, who has been exposed as a liar himself, and says,
Right.
I was there when Stone called him. He knew about Stone.
I think, look, I think there's a component to this which people don't want to fully appreciate and acknowledge, and that is when there is a partisan line about a position that the administration takes. For example, we didn't have any contacts or any dealings with Russia,
Right.
and that's
Which
the
is
line.
exactly what the president said.
And that's the line that you want to put out there. What happens to people, and I've seen this now through history and Watergate and my own experience with Whitewater, is that there are a lot of people who will pick up that line and go with it because they understand that within the administration that that's the position they're supposed to take. That's fine as a political matter. Where you run into trouble, somebody puts you under oath, you're bound to tell the
That's
truth.
why the president wouldn't be put under oath.
Right. Well, but that's also why his people got themselves into trouble. It's the loyalty that is expected, but at some point, loyalty has to sort of fall off
True,
toward.
but he said it, Robert. He said none of my people did anything. He had to know that that wasn't true when he said it. Now his lawyer, one of them, Rudy Giuliani, who's operating more as a press attaché, I think, with this public discourse,
yeah, but I'd be careful about castigating Rudy Giuliani.
I'm not at all, but I'm saying his fallback position now is, no. I never said that there was no collusion or no contact with anybody. I just said just the president. Now, that's not true. And I understand the need for the adjustment, but I also understand the need to ask these questions. I think they matter. I don't think any is gratuitous.
I think they're legitimate questions, but when you know, my trouble with it is if you spend all the time that they're spending, and a lot of time was spent with regard to things involving the Stormy Daniels payment and whether it's a campaign contribution.
Shouldn't have lied about it.
Well, okay. I think that it was obvious that there was a need to apparently from the campaign's perspective to do something with this, but as the John Edwards case showed, which I think hasn't been given sufficient acknowledgement, there's real questions about whether or not you'd be able to prove that a crime was committed by the principal.
John Edwards went to trial.
Yeah, I understand
he got acquitted, but it went to trial.
But I have a basic question for you about that, and that is, suppose that the campaign had gone to the Federal Election Commission and had said to them at the time, we want to make this payment, and they fully disclosed, and we want this to be considered, and we want to use campaign funds in order to do this, in order to make these payments. And the FEC would have looked at them and said, are you out of your mind? This is a personal expenditure. This isn't a campaign expenditure. You can't have it both ways. If it's a personal expenditure, it's a personal expenditure. If it's a campaign expenditure, it's a campaign expenditure. And they can't be sort of used interchangeably. And I think that was one of the things that came up in the John Edwards thing, which is why I don't think from the president's perspective that it was a crime. I don't think that that would be a sufficient underpinning for an impeachable offense. And there's an awful lot of time that's been spent on that.
The problem you have, though, is that his lawyer admitted to it as a felony.
Sure.
And the president was directing it while in office. Let me ask you one other quick thing.
But, again, that's his criminal intent, and that doesn't necessarily mean that that criminal intent was shared by the president.
True, but it doesn't mean it wasn't also. So, that's why I think they have to ask a question. But let me ask you something else. Do you think Michael Cohen wins a civil suit saying to the president, hey, I'm your lawyer. You have to indemnify me on these expenses?
I think that's not a chance in the world.
Not a chance?
No.
Even though he was doing these things for the president?
Well, what is this the retainer now? What are we talking about? I mean, I have really no idea what's going on with regard to that.
We'll see when we get the papers. Robert Ray.
Anytime.
I'll tell you what. You are not easy to go point for point with, but I think it's really helpful for the audience, and I appreciate it.
Nice to be with you, as always.
Always a pleasure. All right. So, look, this isn't over. There are a lot of questions to be answered just tonight about, Manafort and, why indict him in the first place? And why is part of the Russia investigation? Why has he been so central in the probe? I think it's the time to dig, because I don't think you're going to get all the answers from Mueller. Now, another question. Biden time, right? We're playing with that entendre. Why? Because is he going to get in or not? It's early, but it's not that early. We have some news next. Manafort. Today we learned he's going to prison for less than 4 years. We have to see what happens in the case next week. But his punishment for crimes doesn't answer important questions about key issues of Russian interference. So let's go deeper. The big mystery. Why change the RNC platform on Ukraine? Who did it? Why? Remember, this is the one substantive impact that we know happened under Manafort's watch. And it's worth remembering that candidate Trump was quick to distance himself from this.
Why did you soften the GOP platform on Ukraine?
I wasn't involved in that. Honestly, I was not involved. Yeah, I was not involved in that.
Now, look, this is a convenient and recurring theme that could become a problem. The president never knows anything and never did anything. But is he lying again? Who else knew about that platform and why it was made? We're not going to find out from Mueller. That brings us to a pair of guys with key Russian connections, Konstantin Kilimnik and Oleg Deripaska. Manafort spent a decade working with Kilimnik. Prosecutors call him an intelligence asset for Russia, and whose meeting with Manafort is at the heart of the special counsel's investigation. The other is so connected in Russia, he's called Putin's oligarch. Manafort was in deep with Deripaska, personally and financially. Why did Manafort offer him private briefings while running Trump's campaign? The polling data, that's where that comes in. Again, we haven't heard any of this from Mueller. Was Manafort going rogue by passing it to Kilimnik? Sure looks like the type of information, what we call the places and faces, where and whom to target, that could explain why the Russians managed to target the same groups on social media that the Trump campaign was after. Manafort's sentence today is about tax issues, something the president made sure that also nothing to do with him.
They went back 12 years to get things that he did 12 years ago? You know, Paul Manafort worked for me for a very short period of time.
You've known him for decades and you knew what he was about. And here's the thing. Manafort's money problems are a problem for the president. One of the things Manafort lied about was using a Trump super PAC to pay down his debt. Mueller's interested in whether foreign money was being laundered through the super PAC. But the big question that we still don't know the answer to is why Manafort went south on Mueller. He had a deal. Tell us the truth, and you're going to do well here. He would have avoided years that he'll now spend in prison. Prosecutors say he may have been playing for a pardon. But like you've heard me say about so much in this story, why lie? The pattern of behavior is certainly collusive, if not a crime in itself. We'll need to see the Mueller report and see what answers are in there about the president and any knowledge. And then we also have to watch, it's an open issue, will Manafort going to point to this? Renewed scrutiny over a speech that Biden made in 1993, pushing a tough-on-crime bill. He warned at the time, quote, predators on our streets who are beyond the pale. How's he going to explain that in today's era of what we say? Also, comments he made way back in the 70s decrying desegregation. Is that fair? Hey, when you're in the game for this long, it brings pluses and minuses. Which does Biden have more of? Jennifer Granholm and Rick Santorum here for tonight's great debate. Let's see which one of you wants Biden to run more. Jennifer Granholm, what does Biden mean to your party?
Probably me.
What do you think his prospects are?
I certainly hope he gets in, because I think having him in will make the whole field better. I think his prospects, if you look today, are really good. Obviously, today's polls mean absolutely nothing. But he
All right, let's put out the Monmouth poll. Keep talking, Jennifer, but I just put out the Monmouth poll numbers just so people can see.
He brings a trust among Democrats as a whole, having obviously been the vice president for Obama, but also being able to speak the language of working people all across the board. I think he brings a level of confidence that he could actually win, and that's the number one issue for Democrats. We love them all. We'll work for whoever gets elected, but we want the person who's most likely to be able to defeat Trump, and that's why I think Biden's in great position.
Got to tell you one favor, Rick, that Biden's been done by the current president is that he ain't going to get beat by a couple of gaffes. I'll tell you that right now. If you're going to go back to the 70s to find something he said about desegregation, he's going to be in good shape against this president. But how do you feel? If Biden gets in and he were to get the nomination, what does he mean to you?
Well, I think he would be a great person to run against for Donald Trump. Number one, I don't think he's going to get the nomination. Let me just state that first.
Because?
And I don't think because it's very hard for United States senators to win the nomination for president. The ones that have were very recent senators. Warren Harding, John F. Kennedy, and Barack Obama are the three senators who were elected as senators, who had long records in the Senate and elected
True,
president.
but in
the other
this
were
field,
vice presidents
Rick,
that got promoted.
factor this in. He's up against just about only senators.
Well,
if you looked at that poll,
most of them, as you said, most of them are recent senators, and this is the point I'm making. They don't have a long track record, but Joe Biden has, almost 50 years of track record, and there's just so much to pick on. If in a primary, there's just so many times that he's just going to be seen out of step, even if it's 20 years ago. It's just a very, very hard thing to do, and it's just too many targets on him to hit that I think it'll make it tough. And the other thing is, he is prone to gaffes, and I understand that that's not as important in this era today, but he's running in a Democratic primary, and I think they're going to want someone a little different than the gaffe, another gaffe guy running against a gaffe guy.
Is Biden is Biden the Democrat of the present and future, Granholm?
Is Biden the Democrat of the president's future?
Of the present and future. Of the present
I see what you're saying.
future.
Is he the face of the future?
Yes.
Is he the face of the
Much
future?
better. Yes, that's what I meant. Answer that.
Yeah, I mean, you're going to his age, right? And so the age question is going to be...
his positions, frankly. I think Biden could probably take me in a push-up contest.
Pretty much... He is pretty active.
I'm telling you, I've pushed him around a little bit. He's strong. Go ahead.
That's what we're litigating right now, right? Are his positions, which are which are progressive, but more centrist than perhaps Bernie Sanders, but that's the whole primary. The primary is litigating that question. He speaks to a broad swath of people. My guess is the folks who are running on the progressive left, if he wins, will work as hard for him as they'd work for anybody else, because we want to see Donald Trump gone. And Joe Biden speaks to independents, and he speaks to disaffected Republicans, and he speaks to the progressive left. So he's got a very broad band. The question about whether, the age issue is going to be an issue for him. It's going to be an issue for Trump. It's going to be an issue for Bernie Sanders. It's going to be an issue perhaps for Elizabeth Warren. That's all going to be debated. But I think that in our party, we are less concerned about age than we are about, can this person win? Does this person have the gravitas, have the ability to punch back hard, have the experience to be able to win?
Yeah, he's the favorite right now. He and Bernie are the favorites right now, which means they're going to be playing defense the entire time. He has just such a long list of things to play defense on right now. It's
Give
not.
Me some.
It's well, I mean, just
Everybody
if you look
does,
at,
though, Rick.
Well, but if you just look at
everybody's got.
All right, well, hold on. Let's get some. Let's let him set him up, and then we'll shoot him down. Go ahead.
I mean, obviously for the Democrats, you've got Anita Hill. I mean, that's a huge defense that he's going to have to play. He's got the crime bill. Yep. He's got the speech. From his opinion, which by the way he still holds on busing. I mean, these are not things that are frankly popular among the base Democratic voters. And if you go back and you look at his speeches, he's given. If one thing Joe Biden has done, he talks a lot, and he's given lots and lots of speeches. And let me assure you, the opposition research is going to be out there like it's never done before, because he's never been a serious candidate for president before. They will be out there, and I guarantee you, there is a treasure trove of things that Joe Biden has said in the last 40 years that are going to be real problems for him going forward.
You know how people said that this president needed Hillary Clinton to be his opponent, that if it had been anybody else, he wouldn't have had the advantages that he had in the general, even though I still think him winning was a huge surprise, and you have to give credit to the campaign for that. I think it can also be said, Jennifer, tell me if you disagree, that Biden needs it to be Trump. Because, look, Rick is right. He's got a long record, and he's got things he said that he shouldn't have said. But how do you use that as a winning strategy if you're the Trump campaign?
Oh, my God. Really, Team Trump has more than binders and binders worth of gaffes and lies, et cetera, et cetera. We've gone over all of that. It is true that anybody who's been in office for a long period of time has made a lot of speeches.
And only one of the two of them will apologize for anything they ever said.
Exactly. And let me just, to that point, to Biden's credit, he has apologized for the way Anita Hill was treated when he was chairman of the Judiciary Committee. He has apologized for the portion of the crime bill that differentiated between powder cocaine and crack cocaine. He didn't think that was good. He did push to get assault weapons banned in that crime bill. He did push to get the Violence Against Women Act in that crime bill and diversion programs in that crime bill. But the point being is that crime bill was terrible for especially, obviously, African-American men. And he said on Martin Luther King Day, we have lost a generation, and I am sorry for that. So to his credit, he apologizes when he knows it is wrong. And on the busing,
let's leave it there.
Can I just make one quick point, and that is the Democrats are going to realize that when they nominate someone energetic, bright, young, and new, like a Bill Clinton, like a Barack Obama, they win. When they nominate tired and old, like Al Gore, John Kerry, they lose. That's a lesson I think they have to, and Hillary Clinton, that's the lesson I think the Democrats are going to be focused on.
I think that is...
And the Democrats are going to listen to you, for sure, Rick.
No, listen.
But look, listening to me, I'm just observing.
You can look at what's happened in the past.
Trust me, I'm not trying to give them advice to help them win.
You can look what's happened in the past. That's fair.
Good.
But here's our problem as we're living every day. The rules have changed. So let's see how it goes this time around. Let's see if he gets that other 5% and gets in. Jennifer, Rick, always a pleasure. Thanks to have you both.
Great to be on.
All right. About his pursuit of a pardon. California Representative Katie Hill is one of the Democrats leading the push on oversight. Representative, thank you for joining us on Primetime.
Thank you so much for having me.
Big news, arguably big surprise. Paul Manafort, 47 months. Some people thought he was going to spend life in jail. This isn't even 4 years. Your thoughts?
I do think it's short. I think that it's This is the judicial process, right? We can only do what we can do. But I think that there's a lot that comes clear after this. All of these charges were in relation to what he was doing with a Russian-backed Ukrainian president and a Ukrainian government. And I think that the ties that we're seeing, the connections with this administration, with this president and Russia, continue to grow deeper and deeper.
Now, part of the spin on this is going to be Mueller's job was to give us the answers that you're asking about right now. So let's leave it to him. In 47 months, we'll say to some that this is not as serious as the Democrats are making it.
Listen, this is a court system. This is a judicial process that we have to follow up. We are obligated to, do as the jury in the sentence tells us. But that's why the Congress has to act in its own accord. We are the ones that have to hold the executive branch accountable. This is something that played out in the civilian courts, and Paul Manafort is a civilian, so it's not our job to make sure that he serves the amount of time that he should. What we're supposed to do here in Congress is make sure that the president and the administration are held to the highest level of accountability that we need to hold them to.
Now, you seem to be talking about impeachment, and many members in your party have been very shy to use the I word. I always thought it was because, one, you want to limit expectations, and two, the polls are not with you on impeachment right now. You got less than half the American people, way less, when polled say that they see that as a reasonable justification at this point. Why, to you, is it such an easy leap?
Well, I don't think it's an easy leap. I think that it's completely the reason that we have to keep following this. We have to keep finding the evidence and making sure that we're doing our due diligence. It's our constitutional responsibility. Does that mean that we're going to end up ultimately at impeachment? Impeachment's a political thing as much as it is anything else, unfortunately. So we have to recognize that reality, and it's our job as members of Congress to do the investigations, to present the evidence to the American people, and to ultimately, if it is political, it's going to have to be both parties who get on board. The only way that happens is if the pressure comes from the American people. And so that's why, the job that we're doing on oversight is making that available. We've had 2 years of the Republican-controlled Congress trying to hide that information from the American people, trying to do everything they can to cover up for this president and to make sure that we don't have all the information we need. So now we're letting it out. If people end up deciding, hey, this is fine, I'm totally cool with a president doing all of these things, I'll be shocked.
Do you think you've already seen enough that if it were up to you, you would impeach?
The only reason I hesitate is because I don't believe that I could do that without concrete, here's the evidence that I can distinctly point to. Right now we have all of these, it's circumstantial. And I think that to have a strong case, it's incumbent on us to be able to do that. So we're building, and when we do, then, and again, I don't want this to be the case, right? The last thing I wanted to do was to come to Congress to impeach a president. I came here because I wanted to focus on the issues like we're passing tomorrow. We're passing historic legislation, H.R. 1, which is going to provide transparency, accountability, the ability for real people, regular people, to have a say in our elections and to reform our political process. I came here to work on health care. I came here to work on, making sure that the middle class has every opportunity and is rebuilt from, decades of attempts to destroy it. So these are the things that matter to people's day-to-day lives. And instead, here we are trying to deal with the fact that our democracy has been breaking down and that we've got this administration that is, I have words for it that I shouldn't say on camera. But
one of your colleagues did say it on camera. That's why I ask you. Some believe that your wave of new blood into the party did come in with an axe to grind with this president. Hence, one of the Democratic newly elected Congress members said, impeach the blankety blank.
Yeah, listen, I think that we saw turnout in record numbers for a midterm, and I know for a fact that was in large part because of people's reaction to this president. So I would not dismiss that.
Do you believe Michael Cohen to be credible? And would you agree that there is a chance for his testimony to be what Representative Speer called it on my show last night, explosive? That was a closed session, so she couldn't tell me exactly why she found it explosive. But do you think Michael Cohen has that level of goods on the president?
I think the fact that there were two full days of closed hearings with the Intelligence Committee is pretty telling. I mean, they wouldn't waste their time if there wasn't something pretty significant that warranted closed sessions like that for 2 straight days. That's pretty incredible, and not in a good way. And I think it's something that we have to take very seriously. Personally, I felt like he was credible when he was in front of us. I think that
you think he was credible?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's no perfect witness, and
wait, hold on. When you say no witness is perfect, 100% true. Do you believe he lied to you about anything, or he was misleading about anything this time?
I did not feel that way, no.
Not about the pardon, not about whether or not he wanted a job. Those are the two that people are picking on.
No, I don't think so. I really don't believe that there was anything around the wanting a job thing. I mean, I can't imagine wanting to work for that president in any kind of official capacity, let alone any other capacity. But I think in terms of especially because he had a job, right? Like, he got a job with the president. So I think that argument is completely moot. But when you're talking about whether he asked for a pardon in the past, I don't know if it.
Do you really hope that all of this comes to nothing and you wind up having nothing to go after the president with?
Do I have any hope that that's the case? Frankly, no, I don't. I think that I think the question is, how serious is it? For me, a lot of it's about intent. I think at this point we've seen that the mistakes have been very much made, and the question is how intentional, how deliberate was he in this?
So you're not sure what it was, but you are sure it wasn't nothing.
That's how I feel. Yes, I don't know that I can speak for. Well, I certainly can't speak for all of my colleagues.
Sure.
I'm not representing the views of the chairman or of the committee, but that's how I feel.
You're the one I wanted to talk to. Representative Hill, thank you very much. I appreciate this, and I hope it's part of a continuing conversation.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me.
Look, that's a good window